Welcome to the Stay at Work Home. We are here to question the prevailing assumptions about the meaning of life, work, and the purpose of people. Instead of being torn apart by our vocations, we want to be pulled together. Come along with us as we change our picture of the good life and pursue the home as God intended, one that worships through work together. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Stay at Work Home. I'm Keith.
And I'm Becky.
And I'm tired.
Yes, he is.
But that's okay. Becky's going to carry the show. I bring this microphone up closer so it works.
What is Becky going to carry a show about, dear?
It's going to be about the second most important thing to educating?
Something like this.
Mm-hmm. Training a child in the way he or she should go.
Yes.
Okay.
Take it away.
So the first one we talked about was family worship.
Right.
Something you do on Sunday, disconnected from the home and the rest of your life, will continue to be disconnected from the home and the rest of your life, unless you bring it home. Yeah. So do family worship. Go back to that episode. I don't remember what episode it was.
It's there.
It's there. Called family worship.
Yeah.
And the second?
Well, this is kind of it's a second and a third, I will say. And we talk a lot about homeschooling, and that can be a complex deep dive. Mm-hmm. But that is not the only way. It is not exclusively how you can train up children. And there are some kind of hacks, I would say, even to homeschooling, if you are homeschooling, that are kind of the essential pieces. And I would love to tell you, it's this amazing curriculum. We do know a really great curriculum. Or that it's a particular checklist, but it's not really a checklist. But there are two really big component pieces to what I would say give your children the best academic start in life, but not just academic. So what are the big two things? What do you think they are? Do you have any guesses?
Fishing and building bunkies.
Well, okay. That's a good guesses.
No,
kind of.
That's not
one of them could definitely fit inside my category here.
Short-term rentals.
Well, we talk about all that stuff.
Diversified streams of income.
I'm actually going to put business. I know this is crazy. Work, the kind of work in which you receive an income. I'm going to put that as secondary to these other things. So I propose that the two most important things to get your children's minds moving and also build all of the other things you desire in your family would be the art of reading aloud as a family, good books, and then secondly, the art of being outside walls. How does that sound?
I knew you were going to say that, actually.
You did?
Because you already told me.
I did.
But
I didn't say it like that.
Well, we've talked about the reading out loud thing, haven't we? Have we not devoted an episode to that?
We have not devoted an episode, no. And we discussed it. Actually, I think you did that when you visited somebody else's podcast.
Oh.
I think that's when that happened.
I probably did.
Yeah. So we read aloud. We did bring it up in our last episode, actually, about occupational companionship, remember? Yep. Because we talked about how when we were first married, that is something we did together.
Before we had kids.
We read
the Chronicles of Narnia together out loud.
We did.
That was great.
We also read Little House on the Prairie, the whole series together. Yep. And we decided that the fourth book was not really happy for children. So we've actually yet to have read the fourth book. Did I say the fourth book? I meant the last book.
The last book called, not really in the...
It's not really in the official series. The first 4 years. If you've read it, you know why we say this. Because it's a hard book.
It's very different.
It's a different style of writing, and it depicts some real life that was not woven into a pretty easy, palatable, happily ever after kind of story. So
but that's the point. The point was read together.
Read together.
And these particular things, good literature, great literature.
We'll have to.
It could be Lord of the Rings.
It could be Lord of the Rings. It is right now, actually.
I think. I'm not. Narnia has. I don't know. It's got a lot of nuggets.
It does.
So does Lord of the Rings series stuff. But
can I tell a funny about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien? Well, I don't even know if I heard it from somewhere else or if we just made it up. But we had this thought, C.S. Lewis, who's Narnia, and Tolkien, who's got Lord of the Rings, were buddies and in Inklings. That's not made up. That's true. They sat around a table discussing their stories together. And the reason we generally would have encouraged you to start with Narnia is for this reason, that when they sat around the table, they were discussing their ideas, Tolkien would put all his words out there. Lewis would put his words out there, and he'd go, "Oh, that's too much." And he would cut them out and throw them under the table. And then Tolkien would dive under the table, take all the extra words and plop them on his story. Yeah. And there we have Lord of the Rings and Narnia. And then he would make up words with bits and pieces of letters that were laying on the floor as well and call them elven languages. So
Narnia is easier to finish.
Yes, it's
a little denser.
It's actually, I don't know. It's even easier to get going. It's just easier to get going. I will say the nuggets we're actually right in the middle of Lord of the Rings right now, almost exactly in the middle of the 3-book series. And it is rich. There are so many good things in it as well. There's so many little dialogues that have all the nuggets as well, similar to Narnia. But it is harder to get into. So all that aside, those are your stereotypical homeschooly family book series. But I would say you don't even have to start with that deep, that long of chapters. There are lots of stories that are good quality, that give children a good a base of vocabulary without them really having to have the words defined that are beyond what they can even maybe say with their own mouths right now or use. But it gives them context enrich. And how Andrew Pudewa of IEW says complex and sophisticated language patterns can come in through their ears when they're younger than they can even read them with their eyes or be able to say them with their mouths. And that doesn't come generally through other types of language that they receive. It doesn't usually come in their ears through us communicating with our children, because usually with young children, what do we do with them?
Baby doll.
That. Well, you didn't really do that a whole lot.
No, we didn't.
We usually are like, get over here, sit down, be quiet, eat your food, right? Commands, very imperatives, simple. Short sentences. If there are many words to the sentences, they're not always rich words, if you will.
Or nice.
And then like television's another place that a lot of modern children are getting some of their language input. And that also is not especially rich, right? We kind of dumb everything down to be the most common denominators and the lowest common denominators in our TV shows and our movies. And so that's not where they're going to hear beautiful language that is woven rather than just plopped. And these artists that wrote great stories, they wove words. And I mean, the joke about Lewis is that he said a lot less, but he said just as much or more in fewer words. And that doesn't just happen accidentally. So reading aloud is huge. And, a lot of people will come back with, when I mention this, well, my kids are too young, or they won't sit still, or I don't think they're interested, or I have to, read louder than they're goofing off and playing and making noise. That one gets on me, I will say. I don't really love it when my children are making extra sounds while I'm trying to read to them. However, you will be surprised at what is gleaned over the long haul when they are used to hearing words. So it's funny. The first time I remember, we read aloud to Annika when she was a baby, just all the time, just good picture books. I mean, some of them maybe not even great picture books, but picture books nonetheless. And picture books are, again, they're concise, but ones that kind of make it to the stores are the ones, or to the front shelf, and the ones that you're going to hear about or see in the library, they usually are well-crafted ones. They're well-chosen words. They may be few, but they are good. And so we read a lot to her from picture books early on. But I also remember when you were deployed the first time after she was born, the first time as parents, and she and I took quite a few trips on the road together. On
spindly, skinny legs, the heron stands still in the shallow water.
Yes.
Sorry, that was my contribution to the podcast because I'm falling asleep. But that was from a little bitty Annika book.
It was squishy. It was
squishy. You could take it in the bath.
Mm-hmm. It was actually a baby Einstein book. That's a whole funny can of worms too. Yeah. I think they got sued for not making actual geniuses out of kids, as though handing a kid a book could turn them into a genius. Anyway, whatever. So we did read picture books, but we also...
Annika thinks it worked for her.
Yeah, Annika still loves the word spindly, skinny legs, a hand stands still in the shallow water. They're laughing right over there, in case you wondered. But when I was driving some 5 to 6 hour drives when you were deployed, and it was just she and I in the car, she was a good traveler. I have to say that. Not every baby is a good traveler. Sometimes, or toddler. Sometimes there's lots of noise from the back seat. But she was a pretty easy one. And she had come to grow very accustomed to words being spoken in the car as we drove. And so I started borrowing books from the library. And to some degree went at random. Like I didn't choose... the first one that I remember choosing at the library was The Extraordinary Education of Nicholas Benedict, which is actually a fabulous book series. Highly recommend. The narrator is incredible. But it was the prequel that was written after this three book series. And I didn't know anything about any of it. And it was just so good. And she couldn't have been 3 yet no, she was just 2 because that was early on. And we read that book together in the car. And it kind of inspired me to keep going because she might have caught a few things or she would repeat a few things that made me go, oh, she's actually listening. And it just kind of spurred me on to continue not thinking that chapter books were only for adults or big kids.
This weaves right in to keep on the weaving theme. It weaves right in with the one-room schoolhouse and the idea that children actually need less individual attention than people think, as long as they are part of an age diversity, maturity diversity community, i.e. a family that's actually, doing this kind of thing together. And they pick up the crumbs from the table of the older children. That first kid is going to get more individual attention than any of the other kids. And maybe one of the reasons that people are reticent to have a larger family is they don't think they can give that kind of attention. But it's not necessary. Like the first one, well, you're the only buddy they got, so there's going to be that extra attention. But it is not necessary to continue that all along. It's good. One of the things that also was brought up in the news, I heard not that long ago, was the disappearance of the middle child. So you've got a lot of adults, more only child adults than there have ever been. More just one of two, so that they were the oldest or they were the youngest than have ever been. And there is a social dynamic of middle children, of having been in between, that's disappearing from modern adulthood. And it's not good because it's like a diplomatic place that needs to be understood.
Out the extremes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's the learning that happens when you're in betwixt or downstream from other children that are ahead of you. There's there's a social and leadership and followership and diplomatic aspect that happens as well. So doing these things together, whether it's just reading the books or it's also more of a proper, we're trying to educate you expressly here, it can happen and happens quite well, actually.
Yeah.
In a group the size of a family.
Interestingly, I was just processing too at a season when we just had one child, but my sister came to live with us at a very transitional point in her life. She was essentially going from childhood to adulthood, having made some poor choices early in adulthood. And I don't think she would be mad at me for saying that.
No.
The Lord used that time in her life. And in that season, with our little toddler running around the house, we read aloud the Pilgrim's Progress in the original language. Now, if you've ever done that, you would know that is not,
it's not easy,
kid friendly, or not kid friendly. It's not dumbed down language in the slightest. It's actually hard for me to even swallow. We had to do really small chunks.
Hard to hear, harder to read.
Mm-hmm. And
the King James Bible is very easy and understandable after you read
to the Pilgrim's Progress. Yeah. but it was really influential. We got very excited about the little bits and pieces ourselves because it was the first time he and I had read it. But also my sister was really catching nuggets from that as well. So we didn't just read aloud. It formed, dialectic conversation between us as we were reading it. And I don't even remember what Annika was doing in that time, but it was a sweet time in our family because it was nice having Aunt Rachel around. I just called names. Sorry.
Aunt Rachel.
Aunt Rachel. And, it was wonderful having her around. We'd usually have chocolate chip cookies, and it was on Sunday afternoon. And it just was a delightful Sunday thing that we did. And Annika still loves the Pilgrim's Progress. And we've read multiple versions of it at this point. And it's a very, one of the things Annika said when we were talking about what we're going to talk about, she said, you should talk about how you should read Narnia to your children before they even can remember when they started or something like that. And
There should never be a time in your life when you didn't know Aslan. I mean, Jesus.
It should be as much a part of your mind's framework as the Bible, which is, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but there is something to these beautiful, rich ideas that come through story that help to shape you, inform your ideas. And she is now writing things that I think Lewis would love to take a look at. That's my guess. Anyway, be on the lookout one day. She's actually writing right this very moment. She's been waiting all day to get all her work done so that she could then sit down and work on her stories. So
I just want to go sleep.
he just wants to go to sleep. Some of us are morning people. Some of us aren't.
We got to time this podcast
Night
recording
people.
thing for a daytime.
Yeah.
Sometime.
We say that about every other episode. So, okay. So that was the first thing, reading aloud. So if I haven't said that enough, that's
There's
what we should
another
do.
one?
Yeah. Well, you can talk more about this one, maybe. I don't know.
What is it?
So the other thing, because I don't think cooping up inside all the time and reading books is enough. I don't think that actually, there are people in circumstances where that has to be almost enough. But I think that it needs to be well balanced with being outside.
Okay. One thing you didn't mention
Oh,
that you mentioned earlier was, I mean, you kind of mentioned it. You said you might not be like homeschooling proper,
Mhm.
but do this.
Mhm.
This is a significant thing to push you in the right direction. So like you're a single parent, both parents have to work for some reason. Try not to do that. But if you have to work outside them, both parents should work,
yeah.
preferably together
At
But-
home.
at home.
In
Towards,
an ideal world.
yeah. In
But
an ideal world.
there's seasons where that's not happening or happening yet, right? The reading aloud,
Do that.
you can start there. And
Do that.
It doesn't have to be like the whole chapter of Narnia, or even, it can be paragraphs. It can be tiny little blips.
Oh, you can do a paragraph. I mean, you can do a chapter. Come on.
I don't think we
No?
did chapter. I mean, on an audiobook, yes, us reading to our children in our own voices, we didn't do Narnia until a bit later. Well, not with Annika. I guess with younger children we did. Anyway,
I think we did.
you can press them into it, but just be attentive. I say you don't have to make it bigger than it needs to be for the season you're in, for when you're starting out. If you're not familiar with sitting down and reading a whole chapter of a book, or if you're pregnant with another baby, or if you're having really long days at work, you couldn't sit down and read a whole chapter of Narnia aloud to your kids right now with how tired you are.
That's true.
So set a timer and read for 5 minutes. But those are things you can do no matter what situation you're in. If you can be with your children, do it and make it intentional by reading a little bit aloud. You should definitely find Sarah Mackenzie in the Read Aloud Revival. I mean,
I don't think we should talk about going outside on this podcast. We should talk about that another time.
we could definitely. So you want to do that in part 2?
Yeah.
The second,
Record it in the daytime.
we could even do it outside.
Good.
We could. Okay. So that's your cliffhanger there. Next time we will talk about what we mean by getting your kids outside.
Yeah.
For the essentialism of homeschooling-ish things. But not really homeschooling. Just for teaching your children.
Okay. Y'all have a good one.
Cheers.
This episode of the Stay at Work Home is brought to you by HeartlandBunkies.com. Come check out our full line of small cabin kits that can be easily assembled by a few friends or family in just a weekend for extra space for meaningful connection, or extra income, or a home office, a homeschool room, or whatever.